So hello, it's Toby from Toby's UrbanSketch, and here's a fun little video about a few different ways that you can use your fountain pen. And I know it sounds stupid, doesn't it? You just draw with it. There's just a way to use your fountain pen. Well, no, there's lots of ways that we can experiment using the same tool to produce all sorts of different effects. I mean, obviously the most obvious way, most common way to draw with a fountain pen is to use it the right way up. And this gives you a lovely flow of ink. It gives you the sort of feel of, this is a fine nib, and it feels, as we're drawing, like a fine nib. And so, yeah, the reason it's the right way is because it's the easiest, it's the most sensible, the most simple way. But sometimes you want something even finer, we want something more gentle, and so the first sort of different way of using your fountain pen is to turn it over. So let's say we're drawing a little portrait here. When we get to facial features, we might want those really fine lines. We might want to get in details with gentle lines. So turning it upside down, I use this all the time in my videos, but I use it all the time in art as well, is a great way of getting really thin lines versus having it the way around, where you can create nice and bold thick lines. There's other ways as well that we can think about how we can change the quality of line. So even turning it upside down and rubbing it on the side like this can create all sorts of thick textures, bold lines. You might use that to create hair, for example. So this is another way that you can use the same tool to create different marks. Beyond just drawing with the fountain pen, we can think about what kind of ink, what kind of cartridges you have in your fountain pen. So here I've actually got a normal fountain pen cartridge. This is a LAMY Safari fountain pen with a LAMY Safari ink cartridge in. But you could change that ink cartridge to a different colour, and then suddenly you can produce different colours of sketch. And you can also change between whether the cartridge is waterproof or water soluble. Now both of these are water soluble, and traditionally we think of sketching with ink which isn't water soluble, which is water fast. Now the advantage of water soluble ink is, look what happens if we take our sketch. We can immediately create all this lovely tone, this shape, and it's a real shortcut using our fountain pen to creating quick, easy sketches, be that people, portraits, landscapes, whatever we're doing, using the ink as a soluble ink rather than an insoluble water fast ink means we can do all sorts of different things. What's another thing that I like doing with my fountain pen? Well, if we just draw ourselves a nice little cube, we can do what we've just done there. We can wash the ink and create this lovely gentle ink wash. It can be difficult to create multiple tones of ink there. So a couple of ways that we can build up the tone is by coming back in, adding more ink and washing again. But we can also avoid creating those extra lines. We can just use our pen as a little palette for the ink, and suddenly we can very quickly build up that tone. And by carrying around a couple of different pens, so we then pick up a brown one, we've suddenly got a mini palette, not just of sketching equipment, but almost of watercolor pens. And you can create really lovely effects. So we could warm up our little portrait over here with some of this lovely brown, whilst also creating really deep shadows with our black ink. Whilst we're using it as a watercolor palette, we can splash from it. So we can just flick our brush over it and we suddenly get these lovely effects, just like you would with watercolors. And whilst we're doing wet on wet, we again typically think, well, if we're sketching, we need to be sort of sketching and using our pen to create lines on dry paper. But why do we need to do that? Why not use it like we use watercolors, wet on wet? And we can create these lovely soft images just by manipulating how we're using our equipment. So that is my little tips and tricks video on different ways to use a fountain pen. We've got line work the right way around, upside down, manipulating it using the back to create different marks. We've got using it like a watercolour, either soluble ink, doing layers of soluble ink, using the actual pen as a cartridge, and using multiple different pens. And then we can play with doing wet on wet, wet on dry, dry on wet, all these different things, all from just a couple of tools. Please let me know what you think of these kind of little tips and tricks, and thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a like, and if you're not subscribed, then feel free to subscribe and join me for my next video. Thank you very much.